Music has the ability of representing cultures throughout history. Being an art with different ways of expression, in many places it become vital part of the people's daily life. The United Kingdom is one of the countries that has had the most prominence in the history of popular music. Due to its importance in the industry, it has a strong impact on British culture, so much that this country is one of the few where a strong support from the industry can be felt from all possible spheres. London, being the capital, has become a culture center in today's British music. Wherever at the home the greatest representatives in the industry, music important, home of important venues and as one of the capitals of live event shows in the world. The following video will explain how music represents and have an impact on British culture, especially in London, from before the pop music until today. If we were to divide the history of popular music in the UK, the best way is before and after the brilliance of pop music, which will be approximately in the 1960s. Thanks to technological evolution and opportunities to record voices and commercialize them, this generated that music begins to become popular. At the end of the 19th century, parlor music and brass bands were the trends of the time which made classical music become popular in the British. During this time, several cinemas and theaters began to be created so that they could host these events. In addition, the greatest contribution during this time are the music halls, venues which were built for only concerts. Many of these have an important value in history, such as Oxford Music Hall, London Pavilion, or the Old Bedford in Camden. With the arrival of the 20th century, new sounds started to appear during the 20s and the 30s. Inspired under the influence of American jazz and swing, the British dance bands began to be created, groups which had their peak before the Second World War. During the Golden Age, a period where this genre had its heyday, great venues stood out such as the Soria Ballroom, the Bag O'Neill's, the Embassy Club, or the Side Hotel. After the war, new sounds began to arrive due to migration from India, Africa, or America. Sentimental ballads were the ones that dominated the market, along with jazz and blues. However, in the 1950s, inspired by the folk and bluegrass, skiffle became the most popular British genre. This genre was a trend. Due to simplicity of its musicality, the sale of guitar was massively popular in the country, while in part of the mid-50s, rock and roll began to burn, and with that, a new movement in the United Kingdom. After this time, modern British popular music starts, which is represented today. With a new generation, the variety of songs that exists in the country during these times was massively ambitious, and it was a matter of time to this to explode. This was the case during the mid-60s when the birth of rock and roll and blues music. It could be said that from that moment, there were only short time to the United Kingdom would oversee dominating the popular music market. Although the US has always been the most important place for pop music, with the British movement, bands from the side of the world were given an opportunity to be able to give themselves a small place in the industry. And we all know how this ends. Substitute your lies for fact. I see right through your plastic smack. On the other hand, leaving rock aside, the United Kingdom was given the opportunity to export other genres such as jazz, blues, or bhangra. During this time, London was adapting to the new trends, and is where different sectors in the city began to be home of different movements that ended in the largest contribution in the industry. Important places would be Soho or Camden, like genres like blues, punk, or glam, which ended in the second British invasion. Despite the commercial success of both invasions, if we put ourselves in the 1980s, many Britons felt that a greater identity was needed. Many British bands were important in the industry. David Bowie was the one who led the second invasion, but this reflects little what the British really felt. As a result, small underground groups began to form where various movements are created throughout the UK. The Manchester movement was the one that had the greatest success, being the beginning of the change of British popular music to one with great identity. The movement was so great that it did not take so long to attract the attention of other places. At the end of '88, the movement arrived to London with great force, paralleling the first release of the artists such as the Stone Roses or a guy called Gerald. The main reason why the Manchester movement affected the industry in London was that this became a big threat to the labels in the UK. And being this underground movement, most of the artists signed with independent labels, When the big companies started to look for these bands, it was too late. Most of these bands was a professional in this work, so the label, knowing what British youth want, they create its own movement.
She had a thirst for knowledge. She studied sculpture at St. Martin's College. That's why I caught her eye.
Britpop is the biggest effort by record companies to massively export British music to the world. The leading bands Blur, Oasis, Pulp and Suede were much more professional with the publications of these works, and the results were more than expected. The result of the Britpop was a massive success. The identity of being British became a world tendency. This movement was completely planned by the record companies. The big companies bought most of the independent labels from the Manchester movement, and the first Britpop albums was on big launches. There was no any way to lose money in this movement. Even they create one of the biggest music battles in the industry. However, at being a planned move, it has an expiration date. Maintaining the balance between quality and popularity results in everything become redundant. So bands choose to change their sound and others die while others begin to dominate the British industry. Ironically, with the new millennium, British music managed to decentralize, open up to new sounds that were already completely remote from the classical rock. It is at this time when hip-hop and electronic began to dominate certain parts of East London, or in Camden, where jazz returned to have promise thanks to her lovely neighbor Amy, who gave renovation to that neighborhood. But the most important thing about this time is the way in which new bands began to grow, thanks to new ways of communicating. Despite the importance of and great support from the British for their music, one of the main reasons why the United Kingdom is one of the most important countries in the music industry is the strong support from the government and the public. British are open-minded with other sounds, so that's why many of the most representative works in genres such as hip-hop, reggae or electronic could only have been made in the UK. This is due more to the support that exists in the country for music in general. In the UK, there is no debate about whether such thing is music or not. The censorship is almost minimal and the support from the public is massive. Take The Shadow as an example, a person who spent a large part of his life learning about turntables and sampling, and when the idea of making an album full of samples came to him in 1996, he was rejected all over the US and had to come to London to record it. Also, talk about punk and how strong they were with social criticism, even attacking directly to a royal family, and yet they come out with open signing without being censored. United Kingdom is the country that imports the most music in the world, only after Japan. This trend is so great that today it is common to see several artists around the world who decide to work in London due to the freedom they have. Perhaps the largest case we have in town is Brixton and reggae music. After the Second World War, immigrants came to the UK from Jamaica and with their music and culture. It is true that these migrants were in different parts of London such as Hammersmith or Notting Hill. Is in Brixton where the greatest heyday of Jamaican music is centralized in London. By the 50s, both star genres, ska and reggae, began to sound strongly in these areas of the city and to be converted into English music. The demand was so great that after the creation of Skinheads, the Blue Beat label was created. Pama Records, the locals, were in charge of making Jamaican music popular, while in Brixton, there was the Black Red Sound System, which became the mainstay of the Brixton community, who went to have a good time on record and store and enjoy the music of Brixton Splash Festival. Unfortunately, it closed in 2013, but the legacy of Jamaican music continued throughout the years.
You just put your hand in mine. We're gonna leave all our troubles behind. We gonna walk and don't look back.
Perhaps the biggest thing about London has in the music industry is live events. Since the heyday of popular music in the UK, concerts have become vital and are part of lives of Londoners. Most of the most important venues in the city began as cinemas, theatre, or music halls. Those are venues home of various concerts that make London one of the capital every year of live events. Due to the great support from the government and the public, it's extremely easy for artists to find a place to play, no matter how unfamiliar they are. There are examples of bands that manage to fill venues without even having a release of records. There are such as Brick Lane, Brixton, and Camden, despite being the most famous, are still vital in the search for new artists in the British market. As for the most professional bands, it is common that these choose to do concerts in medium-sized capacity venues. This is with the intention of making more intimate show and many times special. They also create cases where venues become more special for the British than their artists themselves. Examples are Ali Pali, Brixton Academy, Roundhouse, KO, Royal Albert Hall, 100 Club, which were the scenes of greatest movements in British industry. On the other hand, unlike the trend that exists in the country, London during the summer becomes home of different metropolitan festivals, stadium concerts, and massive events in the open spaces that exist in the city. The common thing is that these events are held in places far away from the big cities, but during the summer months, London becomes a mandatory stop from the biggest tours of the year. Even many of these are exclusive shows in the country. The places where they are performed have also come to be loved by Londoners. Finsbury Park, Victoria Park, Gunnersbury Park, and Hyde Park are the most used during this time. Many of these manage to host tens of thousands of people who enjoy the great festivals that exist in the city. In conclusion, music was one of the best ways of how to represent the British culture. Throughout the years, the commercialization of the industry became part of the daily life of British people. London, and being the capital, became the center of most of these movements, since the first commercial music, like the British bands, skiffle, the born of pop music, until the current days when, due to the freedom that we have today, it's almost impossible to say what is the trend genre in the country. In addition, and being the UK one of the most important of music and host of the biggest live events, results that music is part of the culture of all the British people and one of the perfect ways to represent them.